here we go. As we put this together in relationship to the diagram that I showed you before, these are the sections that we're going to be working on here, particularly these two with these cross members in place. So the idea is to first secure these in the proper place, and as you can see, I marked one of them starboard because that fits closer to the flush part of the cross members that are in place. So give me a minute to get these set up, and then we will talk a little bit more about what's getting ready to happen. Now, my goal for straightening all of this out, as you can see, some of them didn't go in quite perpendicular as they were supposed to. You can see that because this looks closer together, and of course this looks closer together on this side. So the plan is to measure each end with either the flex tape or the ruler. And on the center beam where the keelson is, we want to make sure that each side has relatively the same distance between them. And as you can see, what I did was using popsicle sticks and gluing them together, we have braces for each one of the frames in order to make sure that they line up perfectly. So for example, like since these two are the most obvious two that are bad, we're going to shift a few things around, all right, so that you can see this. Wait, too, as you can see, I'm a little bit crazy with my numbers here. So actually, if we do this correctly, we come up with 3.8, but here we're at 3.6. So the object is, if we make this 3.8, we can then fit that in here, and then this will be the same as that, all right? So I'm gonna work on that, and I want you to give me some time, and we'll come back and I'll show you the finished product. Basically, this whole section is perfectly even, so I don't have to do much modification. So then I would set this back up in place, make sure it's good, and then I would mark my brace, right? I would find a mark. Now, this is just me, okay? I don't want to use either one of these ends, right? So somewhere in here, I would just pick a spot and mark it off as my starting point. That's what the mark is right here. So that's my starting point. From there, right, I would measure out from 2 to 5.4, right? Because that's what we had up top. So we go 2, and of course you can't see this, but I'm gonna get it, once I get it in place, this is what it's gonna look like. So I'll start at 2 and make sure that's on my first mark, right? So we'll start here like this. And then we want to take this to 5.4. So I would measure another mark here for 5.4. So now that's 2 from 5 to 5.4, which is the same as what we measured between those two. Now, handy dandy dikes. And I would get close, but enough of a mark so that I can see it and try and keep it as straight as possible. Boom, pinch that off. And then on the other side, I would go perpendicular, pinch, break that off. Now this is where it gets really tricky. So I will come back here and try to fit it right in place, because this is where we want it to go. So I want to fit it to make sure it works. And as you can see, it's bigger than it needs to be. So it's not going to work right. So that's what I need to trim down to get in place. So now my idea is, get you a little mask or something so you keep yourself safe. And since I wear glasses, my eyes are partially covered. And I get my little Dremel here. Now, this sander, best thing in the world for me. It's smooth, it's intact, it's rough. It'll handle this pretty fast. So what I would do is since this is straight here as a drum, I would run this along until I get close enough to my mark here and then test fit it. So that would be something like this. Notice how quick that was. It doesn't take long, and as you can see, I got a little bit of mark here, a little bit of mark here. So now I fit it into place along here. All right. And once I get it in there, you can see I try to keep everything relatively even, right? So once I get this in place, and this is what it looks like when it's done, I take another measurement. So I would put this in here, like so, and if it came out 2 to 5, 4, right? Here, and to here, and to the outer edge, a little bit off on this side, so I may end up having to put a brace on this side. But as you can see, that's how we end up putting our braces to keep our frames relatively perpendicular. So, I know it looks kind of rough, but that's what I'm gonna do and try to make everything work. So, bear with me, I'll come back and I'll show you what everything looks like when I'm done. Now I want to show you what I did for my braces. For the ones that I'm going to leave in, I put just a dab of glue on each end to hold the frames in place. So when I put the deck on, these braces won't move between each frame. All right, well, I want to show you a little bit of what's going on here. All right, as you can see, I've made a few of our wedges here to make sure everything was relatively straight. I think you'll like the way it turns out. Of course, you see, like on the rear end, we have some issues here. I think this is because the whole panel was kind of tweaked. So I put it together to see if I can work with it. It looks like it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I think once I put the nail on it and get the glue together, it'll be fine. So what I want to show you now is how we're doing the rear section and how it relates to the print. So, as you can see, I can pull my wedge out, and when I'm done, I'll show you what it looks like. But the idea is, once we sit that back down in there, that will go in a position like this. So, I'm going to get our glue, all right, our wood glue, and put this in a position, you know, to mark it appropriately. Excuse me, because as I'm new, I'm still trying to figure out my camera. But, you know, I have it set up like that. So of course, the idea when I put it in place, right, is to have the wedge, right, for the spacing here. And I put it in like this to make the same spacing between each one of the frames as I go along. And the idea is to put this in as such, and then squeeze it into place so the glue gets a good bond, minus my fingers. And so we're in place with this piece here. Now, it's going to end up drying in place. And of course, I can do this the old-fashioned way by using a rag and some cold water to kind of wipe it away. I can actually use even a knife to make sure that, you know, the excess goes away once it dries. But as you can see, once I turn it upside down, it's pretty much in place. So it'll dry like that. And, you know, all I have to do is put a little pressure on it and it's gone. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the interesting part here. Now, when we go back up here, where we're putting in the frames and everything, you'll notice a block here between frames 3 and 4. And then again here at 7 and 8. And while I only show one side, there are 4 pieces for part number 3 that go on both sides. And the reason why I say that is because here, you'll notice that you'll have to drill the forward mast down into parts 3 and 4, parts 3 on both sides. And here between 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, the next pair that's going to be your center mast. As you can see, 3 and 5 are the pieces that were in this bag right here. We have 5 here, and these are part 3, as you can see right here. Now, if you'll look at our print, and I'll show you that a little later, these are going to go where the masts are going to go. These are going to be the supports for the mast. They go between frames 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is where we're going to put them at. So I'm going to show you me, actually, number 1, and I'm going to put them in long ways, and I'll show you the print on that a little later. And I'm going to say, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, all right, on the outer edge and on the long side of it. And 2, 3, and 4, I'm going to put that in place. Oops, made a mess. Right along the edge and squeeze that in here. Now the good thing about this is that I can already butt it up next to it and let the glue do its work. So once I get these all in place, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Now, as you see right here, I put the clamps on to make sure that they're all flush and in place. As the glue dries, it's going to make a solid fixture. And as you'll see, next to each one of the frames, the closer back you are, when we put the masts in, they're going to be right before each one of the frames. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the interesting part here. Now, when we go back up here, where we're putting in the frames and everything, you'll notice a block here between frames 3 and 4, and then again here at 7 and 8. And while I only show one side, there are 4 pieces for part number 3 that go on both sides. And the reason why I say that is because here, you'll notice that you'll have to drill the forward mast down into parts 3 and 4, parts 3 on both sides. And here between 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, the next pair that's going to be your center mast. Now, if you'll look at what I have here, you'll see the center block here, and down here on the end between frame 3 and 4, you'll see the center block there. So that's where both of the masts are going to go. So when I turn this over properly, boom, this is what it looks like. Between 3 and 4 there, and between 7 and 8 there.